Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Lovely to be here. I'm going to be giving you a quick run through on disc behavioural profiling, what it is, and some of the ways in which you can use it in your life, in your personal life, and also your family and your career. So my name's Elaine Godley, and I have been specialising in disc behavioural profiling now for around 25 years, perhaps slightly longer, and I've used it in all kinds of corporate settings, as well as in my personal life, and helping other people, particularly young people, to understand who they are as soon as possible, so that they can then start to understand what their behavioural strengths are, so they're working towards their strengths rather than putting themselves in situations where they're not being true to themselves, they're not authentic. They might be saying one thing and behaving in another way. A bit like sometimes I suppose we've all done it in the past. If you go for an interview, you tend to say what you want, what you think the person wants to hear on the other side of the table, which isn't necessarily you as an individual. So through the profiling, we can tell how much people are modifying their behaviour to a greater or lesser extent in the public world. We can see how much they're stretching beyond their comfort zone, shall we say. And in that also shows us the kinds of health issues that the individuals are likely to be suffering from. So I've used it in ranges from corporate, individual personal development, appraisals, team development, and latterly in the last few years, I'm more and more using it in the health world, because our behaviour determines our health, and how we behave is very, very closely linked to our health outcomes. So if you're not behaving in the true style that you are at home in the workplace, what's going to happen is you're going to be creating a conflict within yourself. That in turn will cause you stress. Stress causes illness, disease, and it's not a rocket science activity to work out that it's not going to be a happy conclusion. So I'm going to show a screen. I'm going to share my screen and show a picture of the chart. So here we are. Here is a chart which depicts very simply on what where are we? Let's click this. There we go. So what the 4 key characteristics are. So if you were to Google disc, you would find something like 3 million plus search results on disc. Disc is a very well-known, well-used model of behavioural profiling, and it actually goes back to the days of Hippocrates. So this is not some woo-woo thing that I created recently, and it's not anything that I've devised. The unique thing that I do with it is how we interpret the results, and particularly how we relate it to health, as I mentioned. When I first got trained, I had the naive idea that students would benefit from this information, because when I was at school, I was a square peg in a round hole. In fact, I have been my whole life, and that's another story. When students understand that if they are strong characteristics and they're not challenged fully, they then start creating their own entertainment, their own activities, and they're a disruption. That's what I was at school. I was a disruption when I was there. I used to get thrown out of lessons from time to time. When I was there, I used to bunk off school frequently. And had I known then what my behavioural style was, I may have done things differently, certainly at school, but also in my early working life. I couldn't wait to get out of school. I left at 16. I just didn't turn up one day, went into London, got myself a few interviews, started work, and there we go. But I pretty much wasted 5 years, really, if you like, doing various different jobs because they were convenient, admin, accounting type things. So nothing actually is wasted in my view. Whatever we do, we always learn from, and we can take in our careers later on in life. So although I say I wasted it, I didn't really. I suppose what I did was I started to grow up. So anyway, back to profiling. So the DISC model, you will not see these words. These words, DISC, direct, inspiring, supportive, conscientious. these are my words. Many years ago, I had a few people that I trained, and we would go into schools and teach the teachers about this topic, and also the little children, even in kindy age. So that's why we've got the pictures here. We think in pictures, and every picture tells a story, as I'm sure you've heard. So when you look at these animal creatures, you will find that if you were to ask young children if they were one of these animals, which would they choose, 90+% time they would be choosing a character that they relate to. So the high D person would be choosing the lion, etc., etc. And as you can see from the pictures, each of these animals will be behaving in different ways. So the lion potentially could eat up any of them. The owl sits there not really saying terribly much. The little puppy dog is, everybody's friend. The dolphin is flitting here, flitting there, very active. So you've got a whole variety of different aspects to profiling, and I'm just going to give you a very, very quick whistle-stop tour before we dive in. And I will be doing some master classes. You can also obtain your own behavioural profile and a very comprehensive report that we've put together, which also will tell you about your health challenges, as well as how much you are personally able to modify your behaviour. Because we can all be somebody we're not, but what we can't do is keep it up for a long period of time. We can only modify our behaviour to a certain degree, and when we look at the profile graphs, which we come out with on the report, we can clearly see how much somebody is acting beyond their capability, or maybe how much they've still got to go, so that they're not causing themselves any health challenges. So the high D, direct, very strong characteristics, ego, needs to be in control, needs to be challenged. If the high D is not challenged, you're in for trouble, because they will make up their own challenge, they'll make up their own entertainment. These are also the type of students who are likely to be troublesome, because they'll be asking questions. In a workplace, these will be the people that will automatically want to lead a group. They're not team players per se, they're more leaders, not necessarily good ones, but they will be more outspoken and direct than any of the others. So very strong characteristics, very useful in certain scenarios where you need somebody to take charge, you need a challenge fulfilling. Not the ideal person if you need love, kindness, compassion, that kind of thing. Unless it's with animals. Ds are actually pretty good with animals and with children, but not too good with fellow humans. The high I, when we say high, this is any measurement that results in over 50% score on the charts. So the high I, the inspiring sort, they're outgoing, people orientated, fast paced like the Ds are, and they're people. So if you can imagine a high D and a high I, which is my profile, loads and loads of energy, very optimistic, needs a challenge, doesn't finish anything, good at starting things, good working with the team, because the I is a good team leader, not a team member per se, but a team leader. So strong leadership characteristics, and very outgoing. So the 2, D and I, are outgoing characteristics. The S and the C are introverted, so it's kind of the hare and the tortoise scenario. The S and the C, as I've mentioned, more reactive, whereas the first 2 are more proactive. So the S is about kind, caring, sharing, loyal, very supportive, and they also need support. So they're supportive of other people, but they also need support. And the S is the one that causes the most difficulty. They don't like to make decisions. They sit on the fence, and they don't like to make decisions because they're worried in case they make the wrong one and upset somebody. But in doing that, they end up upsetting themselves and becoming quite poorly at times. So the S, the higher the S score, typically the more the stress the person will be dealing with. So it's a case of understanding what your behavioural strengths are, and then knowing how to manage them. And we cover all of that with the profiling service that we offer. The high C, the owl, not very communicative, sitting there, listening, looking, learning, watching. Very rarely, I would suggest arguing with a high C person, because their conscientious nature enables them to be extremely good researchers, and the S as well. The S and the C are similar in ways, because they're very, very good at what they do. The higher the score on the S and the C, the more particular, to the point of potentially being OCD level of behaviours. But they check and they double check, and they try and keep people happy. The S's more so than the C's, but never argue with the C, because they will trounce you with the facts, the figures, all the information that the D's and I's would just gloss over. But we need all of these characteristics. We need the D, I, S and C for a good team. And we do have all of these characteristics in us to a greater or lesser degree. Typically, we would have 2 higher characteristics and 2 lower. The further away from the centre line, so if you have a very low score or a very high score, there's no right, there's no wrong. It just is an indicator of how strong that characteristic is, in either direction, high or low. So that's a very, very quick whistle-stop tour, and hopefully you'll gather from that that there is no right, no wrong profile. There just is. And the sooner you understand what your profile is, the sooner you're able to work out the best way to manage yourself, and also manage the relationship with other people, so that you're not continually putting yourself in a situation that is not conducive to your own health and well-being. So that's it for the time being. Hopefully that has given you some information that you can be getting on with, and I will be back soon. Bye bye for now.